He's the myth. He's the legend. He's the scientist with all the answers and all the questions. It's time for another episode of Alex's Science Corner.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Oh, please. Thank you.
I missed my cue there. Sorry.
Alex, what's going on in the wide world
Yes,
of
tell
science,
us. Please,
my
please,
friend?
please.
All right. A little bit sarcastic there.
No, I'm dying to know what's going on Mars.
She got reeled in by that teaser.
I did.
Yeah, you know what?
did.
I'm going to have to start with an aperitif first. So first up is I'm going to start with the snarky headline, Honeybees Understand Nothing. And the more correct headline of Bees Understand the Concept of Zero. So these researchers in Australia, what they were doing is they were testing honeybees and setting up these targets. And they taught the honeybees to go for that there would be food where there's fewer symbols. They set up this rotating targets that had different number of symbols in front of food. And they taught the honeybees that wherever there's the lower number of symbols, the food was
There would
in
be more food.
Well, not more food. There was food with wherever there's the fewest number of symbols. And so then they start testing with targets that had no symbols on them at all. And the honeybees would go after that because they understood that no symbols was less than a few symbols. So they could definitely tell the difference between 2 symbols and 3 symbols and 0 symbols and 3 symbols. And like humans, they could figure out when there's more difference than when there's less difference. They could figure out between 1 and 6, they could go to the 1 faster than if it was between 2 and 3. But the big thing is they understand that if there are no symbols, that is less than 1 symbol.
And this is important. Why?
Because bees can count. We humans can't do that until about age 5.
They're swarming.
So this is pretty important. The concept of zero is a...
Ow.
Thank you, Brian.
I still don't get why this is important.
Bees can
You're going to have to
count.
explain that to me later.
Bees can be accountants.
Good for them.
Yes, I make that joke because Bobbie's an accountant. So anyway,
It's so simple, even a bee can do it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that.
okay.
What's
And that was the explanation. Thank you for explaining the joke there, Brian.
Hey.
All right.
Hijinks and hilarity here.
It's the fact that insects can tell the difference between many and few. And that is important for understanding how brains process this kind of thought. And the fact that process...
Thank you. That's what
that
I
is
was
a
looking
process,
for.
right.
So they were using the bees as
To
a
understand-
lower
Well,
life
yeah, I mean,
form
that's...
for brain function.
Yes.
Okay.
And so it's like with the size of a bee brain that they can understand this kind of basic math concept. So then we know that there are certain minimum standards, or at least that the bee brain has been set up to at least understand that concept.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
So, next story is about NASA. Okay.
Our top story.
So, NASA had a press conference this past week. I know you're dying there. I know you're not hearing on the mics, but Brian is just dying.
Did you turn my mic off? I thought you turned
No, I can still hear you.
I'm
So
sorry.
NASA had a press conference this year. And as always, I like to tell people, whenever NASA has a press conference, tend to be a little bit underwhelmed for your average person. For a scientist or a person who studies this kind of stuff, it's always cool news, but it can be a little underwhelming. I know whenever people hear NASA, they think they're NASA's going to introduce them to aliens, where in this case,
I thought they delivered on this one, quite frankly.
okay. So, and what it is NASA found organic molecules on Mars. But there's actually two stories involved in this. First one is that the Curiosity rover found there's a cyclic methane outgassing on Mars. Why is this important? Well, we had detected that there's methane on Mars, which is unusual because methane is not going to last long on Mars. It'll probably last a couple years before it disappears. So anything that creates methane is creating methane right then. Now, one of the things about methane is one of the big sources of methane is life. Unfortunately, for people researching this stuff, methane can be produced by other methods other than life. There are certain types of volcanic and other chemical outgassing processes. But methane can be a part of life. So it might be an indicator that there may be life.
Well, and if they found organic matter on there.
Right. So
Right,
yeah,
and
it's
so-
possible.
Well, yeah,
it's
the two go
possible-
And
hand
we'll
in
get to
hand.
that in a second.
There's
but
possible that there was life there in the
Well,
past, right?
yeah.
The first thing
That's
is
kind of what they're getting at.
Yeah, there's a possibility. But first, the methane cloud is just, they've seen it cycling and they've got it repeatable. Before then, they've just seen it occasionally and then
So
getting more.
now they've got
they
it.
know they've got a cycle, and it happens in the summertime. The methane concentration increases in the summertime.
So something is definitely happening on a cyclical basis
Right,
that's
right.
putting methane in the atmosphere.
Now, the second part of the story is about organic molecules that they found. Now, there are a lot of organic molecules that they knew about already, but they're the simpler organic molecules. These are more complex organic molecules that they found in their research. They were using the Curiosity's Sample Analysis at Mars, or SAM instrument, also known as, let's try and make an acronym fit as best as we can, because sample analysis at Mars kind of seems a little redundant. But what they were doing is they found more larger molecules than what they were expecting to find.
There's life on Mars.
I know.
Well-
I know. Isn't that great?
You're underselling it, Alex.
You are.
You really are, man.
They did not find life on Mars.
Well,
What
organic.
they found is molecules that are either big enough to be used by life or may have been used by life. So one way or the other,
There
these
either
are,
was or there's life coming to Mars.
well, it could have been used for creating life, or it may have been created from life. Now, there's still a lot of processes that can still create these molecules. And so what this means is, in the theory of life on Mars, it still maintains the theory as a definite maybe. If we did not find these molecules, then the answer would be probably not. But with these molecules there, it still remains as a definite maybe. Now, I know you want to...
I think you really just killed that story.
Well, here's the thing. The difference between not and maybe is a big one.
This is
And
supposed
that's
to be box office, baby.
And that's the box office. It's
organic
still a maybe.
matter. There might be life on Mars in the
and
past.
not simple organic, complex organic matter.
Yeah,
was
but it's
found.
still, there's stuff that can still do that without being life.
He
But-
just doesn't want there to be life on Mars. I know. I know.
And this is why
You can't hold life back. It's gonna come. It's gonna. It's like in the
I feel like I'm
spring.
in
It's
Jurassic
gonna
Park.
pop up.
Life finds a
Way.
way.
That's it. That's it.
Are
That's
they,
exactly
are
what
they
I was
releasing
thinking.
another one of those
Yes, they
movies?
Yes, they are.
Oh, good grief, why?
Okay, so back
Jeff
to this. Hold
Goldblum
on.
wanted it.
Look, the issue between not having life on Mars and there might be life on Mars is the distinction, and it's maintaining it in the possibility of maybe. They are sending more instruments that they're expecting to launch in about 2 years to Mars that are going to go into more in-depth research and will give more information. But right now, This is maintaining the possibility is a definite maybe, as opposed to, we're not.
I've got a bigger question.
Okay.
So they've got this rover that's still on Mars doing research.
Yes.
Which is called Spirit. Spirit.
They have Spirit died a few years
Spirit died.
ago. Spirit and Opportunity were the first two real rovers.
Okay, so which one's the one
This
that's
one's
on?
Curiosity.
Okay, so Curiosity is on Mars. How long had it been that it had discovered this organic before we knew it discovered this organic molecule?
Well, they got the drill working again in the past 2 or 3 months, and they're able to get the drill working again, which is a lot of the science stories are talking about that.
Just give me a time frame. How long does it take to transmit the information from Mars to now?
Probably about a day. But then the researchers have to go and figure out what the data is.
All right.
Okay.
We're getting off track here. So why don't we kind of let's
there's life on
Let's tie
Mars.
these loose ends up and let's move along. All right. If you have any questions about these stories or anything else science related, you can call.
The maybe is real important.
It is. Yes.
Unfortunately, people think maybe means yes, which maybe actually means maybe. But it does not mean no. And that's the big important difference.
Feel free to call 203
837-9924.